In a world where politics is often driven by power, wealth, and influence, one man stood apart. A quiet rebel, a passionate activist, and an unlikely leader who shook the foundations of British politics. This is the story of Jeremy Corbyn, the man who divided, inspired, and challenged the status quo for decades. Stay with us as we uncover his life, his politics, and his legacy. Jeremy Bernard Corbyn was born on May 26, 1949, in Chippenham, Wiltshire, England. From the start, his life was surrounded by politics and big ideas. His father was an electrical engineer and a strong peace campaigner, while his mother was a mathematics teacher who had once joined protests against fascism during the Spanish Civil War, showing young Jeremy that standing up for what you believe in was part of his family's values. When he was a child, Jeremy's family moved to Shropshire, a quiet, rural area in England. There, he grew up with a strong sense of justice, community, and equality, ideas that would guide him for the rest of his life. His parents often talked about politics at home, and Jeremy listened, learned, and slowly formed his own views about the world. At school, Corbyn wasn't known for top grades. In fact, he left school at 18 with just 2 E-grade A-levels. Not exactly the results most people expect from a future national leader. But for Jeremy, books and exams were never as important as activism and standing up for causes he believed in. As a teenager, he joined local campaigns, marched for peace, and supported anti-apartheid movements. He believed that ordinary people had the power to change unfair systems, an idea he will hold on to for decades to come. From an early age, Jeremy Corbyn showed that sometimes passion, commitment, and belief in social justice can matter more than school grades. And that was only the beginning of his long political journey. In the late 1960s, Jeremy Corbyn wanted to see the world and understand how people lived beyond Britain. So, he traveled to Jamaica and parts of Latin America. These trips opened his eyes to poverty, inequality, and the struggles of ordinary people under unfair systems. What he saw and experienced during these journeys shaped his ideas about global justice and made him believe even more deeply in standing up for the oppressed. By the 1970s, Jeremy was back in Britain and ready to fight for what he believed in. He became a trade union organizer, working side by side with workers to fight for better pay and safer conditions. He was often seen on picket lines and at protests, demanding fair treatment for everyone, no matter their job. Corbyn also became a strong anti-apartheid campaigner, speaking out loudly against South Africa's racist system that treated black people as second-class citizens. He joined countless marches and rallies, helping build pressure that would eventually contribute to ending apartheid. His early career was full of protests, community work, and tireless advocacy for workers' rights. For Jeremy, politics was never just about sitting in an office. It was about being on the streets, listening to people, and fighting shoulder to shoulder with them for a fairer world. In 1983, Jeremy Corbyn took his activism into Parliament. He was elected as the Member of Parliament for Islington North, a seat he would keep for more than 40 years. One of the longest-serving MPs in British politics. From the very start, Corbyn stood out because he refused to just follow orders. In Parliament, he quickly built a reputation for being rebellious. He often went against his own party's leaders when he felt they were wrong, and he did this hundreds of times over the years. Jeremy stuck firmly to his beliefs. He spoke out against wars he thought were unjust, he opposed nuclear weapons, and he always pushed for social justice at home and abroad. While some people in his party saw him as a troublemaker, his supporters saw him as a man of principle, someone who would never compromise his values just to fit in. His decades in Parliament showed that for Jeremy Corbyn, politics was not about power or popularity. It was about standing up for what he believed was right, no matter who disagreed. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Jeremy Corbyn stayed true to his role as a voice of dissent, someone who spoke up when others stayed silent. He strongly opposed the Iraq War, saying it was based on lies and would only bring more suffering. He continued his long fight against nuclear weapons, arguing that spending billions on weapons of mass destruction made no sense when people needed better schools and hospitals. Corbyn also spoke up for Palestinian rights, calling for peace and justice in the Middle East, even when this brought him heavy criticism from his own party and from the media. His activism didn't stop in Parliament. He joined protests, stood on picket lines, and marched on the streets for what he believed in. He was even arrested multiple times during demonstrations, but this never scared him off. For Jeremy Corbyn, standing up for his principles always came first, no matter the risk or the criticism. In 2015, something happened in British politics that almost no one expected. Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader of the Labour Party. At first, people thought he didn't stand a chance. He was seen as a rank outsider, a rebellious backbencher who had spent decades disagreeing with his own party's leaders. But that outsider image turned out to be his strength. Corbyn's campaign brought fresh energy into politics. He spoke directly to young people and working-class communities who felt ignored by mainstream politicians. His message was clear: hope, fairness, an end to harsh austerity measures, and a promise to tax the rich more to support public services like health and education. People who had never joined a political party before signed up in huge numbers just to vote for him. Many older MPs and party insiders couldn't believe what was happening. But out in the streets and at rallies, thousands were chanting his name. Under Corbyn, Labour's membership exploded, reaching over 500,000 people, making it the biggest political party in Western Europe at the time. His rallies were like music festivals, full of young people, families, students, and workers, all wanting to hear a new kind of politics. He turned from a quiet backbencher, often ignored in Parliament, to a symbol of a new left-wing movement in Britain. To his supporters, he was proof that you didn't have to play by the old political rules to inspire millions. Whether you loved him or hated him, one thing was clear: Jeremy Corbyn had changed the game, and his rise showed that people were hungry for something different. In 2017, Jeremy Corbyn pulled off something that stunned Britain's political world. Against all odds, and despite months of hostile headlines and people calling him unelectable, Labour under Corbyn achieved one of the biggest election surges in British history. His campaign was energetic, full of huge rallies and a manifesto packed with bold promises: free university tuition, an end to student debt, renationalizing railways and utilities, and massive investment in the NHS and public services. Millions of people, especially young voters, turned out to back him. Many were voting for the first time, inspired by his promise to make Britain fairer and more equal. On election night, the results shocked everyone. The Conservatives lost their majority. They still held power but were weakened. Theresa May, who was Prime Minister at the time, had expected an easy win, but instead, Corbyn's Labour wiped out that lead with a grassroots surge. Though he didn't become Prime Minister, Corbyn's performance proved something big. Ideas that many thought were too radical for modern Britain were actually popular with millions. He brought policies like free university, affordable housing, and renationalization back into the mainstream conversation. Suddenly, politicians couldn't ignore issues like rising inequality, insecure jobs, or struggling public services. Even his critics had to admit, Jeremy Corbyn had reshaped British politics and shown that an old backbencher with a simple message of hope and fairness could shake up the whole system. But the years that followed Corbyn's big election surge were anything but smooth. Brexit, Britain's decision to leave the European Union, created deep divisions, not just in the country but inside the Labour Party too. Many traditional Labour voters supported Brexit, while others wanted to remain in the EU. Corbyn struggled to keep everyone happy, and his stance often seemed unclear. At the same time, his leadership faced internal battles. Some Labour MPs never accepted him, and party infighting weakened their message. Then came the allegations of anti-Semitism in the party, a serious issue that Corbyn's critics said he failed to handle properly. This damaged his reputation and gave his opponents more ammunition. All of this came to a head in the 2019 general election. The Conservatives, led by Boris Johnson, won a huge majority. Labour, meanwhile, faced one of its worst defeats in decades, losing seats in its traditional strongholds, places that had voted Labour for generations. After this loss, Corbyn took responsibility and stepped down as leader in 2020. He went back to where he started, sitting on the backbench in Parliament, still an MP, still campaigning on issues he cares about. Even though his time as leader ended in defeat, Corbyn's impact on British politics is clear. He made bold, left-wing ideas part of the national debate again, ideas that won't easily disappear. To his critics, Jeremy Corbyn was too extreme, a leader whose ideas were unrealistic for modern Britain. They called him divisive, out of touch with ordinary voters, and said his radical policies would push the country backwards instead of forward. But for his supporters, Corbyn was exactly the opposite, a breath of fresh air in a world of polished, cautious politicians. To them, he was honest, principled, and unafraid to speak up for people who felt ignored by the powerful and wealthy. He stood up for the working class, the poor, and those who had long felt left behind. Even though his leadership ended in controversy, and his time at the top was full of bitter arguments and media attacks, Corbyn's impact didn't just disappear. He remains a symbol of grassroots activism, proof that ordinary people can still shake up politics. All around the world, his ideas about social justice, equality, and fairness continue to inspire a new generation of young activists and left-wing movements. Love him or hate him, Jeremy Corbyn showed that sometimes politics can be about hope, protest, and fighting for a better world. No matter how hard the battle, Jeremy Corbyn's story is not just about one man, it's about an idea. That politics can be different, that ordinary people can demand change, and that sometimes the most unlikely rebels can make history. What do you think is Jeremy Corbyn's true legacy? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the world of politics.